Welcome, everyone. Before we begin, I would like to start with the land acknowledgement. Virginia Tech acknowledges that we live and work on the Tutelo and Monacan people's homeland, and we recognize their continued relationships with their lands and waterways. We further acknowledge that legislation and practices like the Morrill Act of 1862 enabled Virginia to finance and found Virginia Tech through the forced removal of Native nations from their lands, both locally and in Western territories. Furthermore, the labor of enslaved Black people also generated revenue, and it enabled the creation of Virginia Tech. Because of this historical reality and legacy, as an institution, we have moral and ethical obligations to create a more diverse and inclusive community, one that includes those who were prohibited from attending Virginia Tech because of the legacy of racism in America and Virginia. This is the collective work and responsibility of Inclusive VT, our institutional and individual commitment to Ut Prosum in the spirit of community, diversity, and excellence. So thank you for attending the Asian Pacific Islander DC American Heritage Month's InspirASIAN series, featuring some amazing graduating undergraduate students. My name is Dr. Nina Ha, and I'm the director of the Asian Cultural Engagement Center, or the A Center. It is my pleasure and privilege to introduce 5 inspiring and wonderful speakers for this event. I will be introducing them all in the beginning in the order of their presentations. We will save the question and answer after all of the presentations have been delivered. However, please feel free to ask the questions in the question and answer box or the chat throughout their presentations. The first speaker will be Elaine Consolation. Elaine is a senior in civil engineering, specializing in structures and hydraulic structures. Elaine is also serves as a fellow for the Asian American Student Union at Virginia Tech and has been on its executive board since her freshman year. She identifies as Filipino American woman in STEM, and she will discuss how recognizing her hyphenated identity became important for her work. For fun, Elaine enjoys crocheting, reading, and writing poetry, and going out on picnics. I hope you enjoy that this April and before you graduate, Elaine. Elaine. The title of Elaine's presentation is A White Man's World, How I'm Navigating the World of STEM as a POC Woman. Second will be Lily Shea. Lily is a senior majoring in business information technology with a concentration in cybersecurity, management, and analytics. She currently serves as the treasurer of VT Ascend, new member educator of Alpha Kappa Delta Phi Sorority Inc., and a programming assistant of the Asian Cultural Engagement Center, or the A Center. She is a second generation Chinese American woman, and in her spare time, she enjoys organizing, making arts and crafts, and going to the gym. The title of Lily's talk is VT APIDA Undergraduate Student Experiences in BIT. The third person is Tareem Alam. Tareem is a senior majoring in multimedia journalism and international relations with minors in women's and gender studies and Middle East studies. She's currently the vice president of Muslim Student Union and a programming assistant at the ACE. Throughout her time at Virginia Tech, Alam used opportunities for undergraduate research and independent study as ways to incorporate her multiple academic and professional interests. The title of Tareem's talk is We Are Just Not That Into You. You Stink, Exploring Gender Dimensions of Civil Action in Lebanon's Health and Environmental Crisis. Fourth will be Jessica Nguyen. Jessica Nguyen is a student activist studying economics, PPE, and Asian studies. She specializes in advocacy in an institutional, local, and national context. On an institutional level, she serves as a president of the Asian American Student Union at Virginia Tech. She enjoys spending her time a local nonprofit organization that facilitates mutual aid programming for the NRV area. Jessica's title of presentation title is Archival Research in APIDA Historiography, Juneteenth Scholars, and COVID-19 Gendered Publishing Patterns in Economic Scholarship. And finally is Michelle Kim. Michelle is a senior studying English with a concentration in pre-law. She currently serves as Vice President External for the Asian American Student Union at Virginia Tech, which is a position she has found deeply rewarding both professionally and personally. As an Asian American woman pursuing a degree in the humanities, Michelle is thankful for the Asian American professors she has had over the years, who have all demonstrated that visibility and representation do in fact make a difference. And Michelle's title is Hamlet in the Translation of Madness in Asian Languages. So without further ado, I will allow Elaine to start off.
Hello, I will share my screen. How do you present? Please load. There we go. Okay. So, like I said, my name is Elaine, and as you can see from the title slide, I'm here to share my experiences in a white man's world, how I'm navigating through the world of STEM as a woman of color. I felt it was actually best to give you a few minute long synopsis of my life here at Virginia Tech. Now, if you know me, I talk a lot. I will keep it brief, I promise. So I guess you could say here is the starting point. A young Elaine announcing to the world that she got into Virginia Tech's College of Engineering. I think this was actually my high school spirit week called College Day. I'm pretty sure I wore it for a reason, not just to brag, but yeah, there we go. So I guess you could say the real starting point for my interest in engineering related concepts goes as far back as to when I was a little kid. According to my dad, I was already asking all of the right questions, like to any engineers in the crowd, maybe you know what I'm talking about, like why do parking lots look like this? Who builds buildings? How do we know if a bridge can handle this many cars on it? My dad always answered, a civil engineer would know. And my dad is a mechanical engineer himself. And we would build little models out of physics kits to teach me about like kinematics and projection. And I was often told that I was good at math and science as a kid, and especially how like the world needs more women in STEM. So I guess that's how you could say that I was like plugged into this whole STEM pipeline from there. And the reasons for these pictures is because these are some of like those iconic civil engineering moments for me. I was just drawn to as a kid. Nina knows for like my statement of purpose back when I was trying to apply for grad school, like my whole title was bridges, buildings, and dams. Oh my, so there we go. It's right there. I put it in the wrong order, but it's there. Moving into Virginia Tech, I was extremely, I see Lily laughing, but yeah, moving into Virginia Tech, I was extremely excited. That summer before starting college, I was so excited for that fall because I was romanticizing this idea of being away from home, making new friends, basically doing anything that I wanted. In a lot of ways, I did do that, and I'm forever grateful that I had these good experiences. It was just not in the way that I was expecting. So I guess I'll explain the pictures. But yeah, so yeah, I joined the Filipino American Student Association. I joined the Asian American Student Union. That's Lily and I in the middle. And yeah, so I was like, you're looking really forward to just having this super cut of all my experiences. And I wish I could say the journey was as pretty as these pictures look and as simple and linear as I once naively believed it would be at 8 years old. I didn't know much about being a minority. I grew up in Virginia Beach that's very like the presence of other Filipino families was very heavy. Growing up as a young Filipino American woman, I in this white patriarchal system, that was a narrative I never imagined for myself. I still remember my first day of college vividly, literally my very first class. It was Foundations of Engineering. I walked in and all I saw were white boys. No hate at all. It was just like, that's all I saw. There were no girls for the first few minutes. And when these other two girls came in, so yeah, that's right. It was just me and two other girls in a class of 50. And they were white girls. And when there were people of color, they were men. And I was having a meltdown in my brain. I was like, what did I get myself into? I didn't calm down until I saw my professor walk in. And believe it or not, she was an Asian American woman. Her name is Dr. Jennifer Lowe. Um, I wish you felt the amount of relief that I felt when I saw her walk in. Like, I think of her all the time when when I'm asked, like, why does representation matter? Because it's more than just like the major motion pictures that you see out there. Like, those are great. Like, those reach wide audiences, but um it's like everyday life that's just as important, because it's real. And it's why I didn't run out of that classroom right then and there, and it's why, like, I'm still in this program, graduating in May. It's a big deal. So I also thought I should talk about my research experience, my one research experience, because I know some of us in the panel will be sharing their experiences with that, and also because I feel it's relevant to my story. So my sophomore year, I participated in the research experiences for undergraduates. Um, I worked with Dr. Madeline Flint. She was a former assistant professor in the civil engineering department. Um, For her, I compiled known building data, and the title of her project was Performance-Based Decision Support System for a Resilient and Sustainable Multi-Hazard Building Design. Um, I can't take any of the credit. All I did was look at her Excel spreadsheet and like try to verify things, but that was all my experience. Um, that's all I did. But under her tutelage, like I learned more than just like the practicalities of structural elements in different geographical contexts, but I also learned the logistics of working in research under this engineering discipline. Um, to clarify, Dr. Flint is a white woman. Though she and I had many differences in identities and narratives, what we did share was really special to me. A conversation I'll never forget was when Dr. Flint shared with me the hardships she and other female colleagues had faced while pursuing their doctorates. She spoke of those like who just weren't where they wanted to be. They've been decelerated by obstacles, who just quit entirely, and then all for reasons having to do with their gender. Um, she told me she shared these stories with me just to not discourage me in any way, but that to empower me to continue like she did. So as you can see, my experience with research is not extensive at all. So I guess like why did I stop after one school year? I just decided it wasn't the path for me. It didn't have anything to do with that conversation. It just wasn't something that I wanted to keep going with. We went our separate ways after that year, but I'll never forget the lesson she taught me. It's just I applied it somewhere else, and that was in my program and where I am right now. So because research wasn't something that I decided to dedicate a lot of my time to, I decided to pursue other hands-on experiences instead. I served as a mentor wherever possible because I enjoy being an older sister and sharing my story with others. And I continued being a part of ASU, where a lot of my advocacy experience came from. And I applied to summer internships. I spent the summer of 2019 as a bridge office intern with the Federal Highway Administration in Sterling, Virginia. Funny enough, my friend Kevin and I, pictured on the right there, were the only Asian Americans on the whole intern roster. So again, like that experience of being one of the very few women and one of the only Asian American women in the room, um, that repeats itself a lot, um, just in these recent years. And I'm sure it'll keep going, but it's fine, because I'm standing much more confidently. And coming back for my senior year, I wanted to make an impact. Like, I guess that was um, when it really came into when it really all fell into place for me, understanding that my identity, like though I tried not to address it a lot in my life, I understand like it's really important now. And um, So yeah, despite the moments of hardships I have faced, I am proud to give back after all the opportunities that tech, its engineering program, and its community has done for me. Um, so yeah, that's where I am now. My yes, I took this photo like a few minutes before the presentation. Yes. um, so my fellowship with Virginia Tech's Asian American Student Union has given me the opportunity to expand upon this passion for engineering by leading a year-long project of my choice. With my project, I titled it Support for STEM Students. I've created like this tightly knit mentorship program for the APIDA community. This network is among APIDA students in STEM. And with this program, um, I'm basically the mentor that I wish I had for myself. Um, Someone with my face and my experiences. And as you can see, my journey through college as an undergraduate has been a dynamic and purposeful one, and in a way that I just never expected. Um, I'm continuing to find more confidence in my hyphenated identity, but merely scratch the surface in everything I want to learn. Um, Starting next fall, I will be working as a civil engineer for Grunley Construction Company in the DC, Maryland, Virginia area. I envision myself maintaining this country's infrastructure, doing the job, working to overcome these challenges that the surrounding community will face. But most important to me, I envision myself continuing to share my narrative so that others like me will someday share a much better, more inclusive one than mine. Yes, that's the presentation. But yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Elaine. Lily?
Okay, let me share my screen. Can everyone see my screen? Fine. Okay, great. Okay, so today I will be sharing my experiences as a Virginia Tech APIDA student majoring in Business Information Technology, or also known as BIT. But before I begin, I just wanted to say thank you to everyone here for taking time out of their evenings to be at this event. Also, a special thank you to Dr. Ha for giving us this opportunity today to share our experiences, accomplishments, and research. Okay, so some quick background about me. I grew up in McLean, Virginia, which is about 15 minutes away from DC. I've lived in McLean from preschool till now, so basically my entire life. I began my education here at Virginia Tech in August 2017, and I am currently majoring in BIT, which resides in the Pamplin College of Business. Next month, I will be graduating, and upon graduation, I will be joining Freddie Mac as a full-time business analyst within their single-family division in McLean, Virginia. During my time at Virginia Tech, I've been involved in numerous organizations, however, none of which can compare the experiences that I've gained through the Asian American Student Union, or AASU for short. I've been involved with AASU since my freshman year as an intern with my fellow panelist, Elaine, to my junior year when I became president. In the next few slides, I've included some projects or events that I've pioneered or led throughout my time in AASU. During my sophomore year as special events coordinator and vice president internal, I held a movie night featuring the film Joy Luck Club. I also created a mixer event with the Association of Chinese Students and Scholars to connect Asian American students with international students. For Asian Pacific Islander Day American Heritage Month, I created an event on destigmatizing mental health in the Asian American community and exploring identity development in the Asian American community. For AASU's guest speaker, I had the privilege of bringing Timothy Chan Turangsu, formerly known as Timothy De La Ghetto, to Virginia Tech. And actually, this last flyer on the bottom right was an event that I led last semester for VTSN. So it's not related to WSU, but I just wanted to briefly highlight it anyways. This next slide highlights two larger scale events that I pioneered in efforts to bring the APIDA community together. This first one is a flag football tournament. The first year that we hosted this, we had 4 APIDA organizations participating and over 90 people registered. The second one is a pageant where our theme was Crazy Woke Asians, which was inspired by the film Crazy Rich Asians since it came out that year in 2018. We had 8 contestants from various student organizations representing various Asian countries. Fun fact, I hand painted every single sash that the contestants are wearing in this photo. It was a very dreadful time for me. But anyways, I wanted to showcase these 2 events because I really enjoy creating opportunities for the APIDA community to come together. And I truly consider these 2 events to be part of my legacy in WSU. The last slide I'll show about events that I've pioneered is a relaxation series centered around mental health in minority communities. This was a 4-day event series where I worked with the Cultural and Community Centers, Schiffer Health Center, Rec Sports, and Cook Counseling Center. This event series means a lot to me because it was one of the first events I've ever hosted at the university, and it started the conversations about mental health in the APIDA, Black, Latinx, and Native American communities. So now I'll be talking about my major and concentration and why I decided to do BIT here at Virginia Tech. So BIT is actually just what Virginia Tech calls it, but everywhere else it's called Management Information Systems. I came into college as a BIT major, and I picked BIT because I visited the Pamplin College of Business during my senior year of high school, and I was pretty impressed with the program. Here are some of the facts and figures I pulled off of the BIT website that probably grabbed my attention back in the day. Also, another reason I consider BIT is because my mom is a software engineer and my dad is a business entrepreneur. So I thought it would be nice to be exposed to both fields and see which one suited me best. So for BIT, there were originally 2 concentrations, but in 2019-2020, a 3rd concentration was introduced called Cybersecurity Management and Analytics. I switched over to cyber because I think it's really useful to learn more about technology that as human beings, we are becoming more and more reliant on, and to learn about how to protect our data and privacy. I've noticed that throughout my college career, I've only had a total of 2 APIDA professors. However, neither were BIT professors. So one was in the Department of Political Science and the other is in management. Knowing that Virginia Tech is a predominantly white institution, I wasn't too surprised to find that I wouldn't encounter many APIDA faculty members in my field of study, but I have noticed that there are a lot of APIDA students majoring in BIT or just other business majors in general, because there are always at least a handful of them in each of my classes. So I thought it was surprising that there weren't any APIDA professors in BIT. However, for this panel, I did look up the BIT directory and I saw that there are actually 3 APIDA faculty members and 4 PhD students. So it does seem like there is some APIDA representation in BIT, but it would definitely be nice to see there being more APIDA faculty for future APIDA students. Since Dr. Ha asked us to share our research and projects, one academic project that I wanted to highlight is the work that I got to do last semester in my project management course, where I was able to help the APIDA caucus with its rebranding efforts. This project was pretty unique in that it allowed me to directly utilize my area of study on work that supports an APIDA organization and the APIDA community. For this project, my team and I produced deliverables such as this lunch socials event flyer and brochure explaining what the APIDA caucus is. We also helped design a website and research and produce a marketing plan to help the APIDA caucus with its marketing efforts. I am very grateful for the opportunity to work with the APIDA caucus for this project because I learned very valuable skills such as communication, teamwork, problem solving, responsibility, and time management. Another project I wanted to highlight focuses more on my cybersecurity concentration. I am currently taking a course called Future of Security. I believe this is the only course I've taken in college that is cross-disciplinary, since it is a pathways course for BIT, political science, computer science, and computational modeling and data analytics students. The course itself isn't just limited to digital security, as we also learn about other areas of security, such as political, environmental, and economic. In this course, we actually participate in simulations, and one of such simulations is called Wargaming. So wargaming was originally used by the military to simulate warfare and recreate specific historic battles. But in the modern context, it can now be used to simulate any lifelike scenario. So at the beginning of this semester, we actually participated in a virtual COVID-19 war game where our goal was to battle and counter disinformation. Here on the left is the letter that introduces what we're supposed to do for this war game, and the screenshot on the right is the platform that was used to host this war game. Overall, it was a pretty interesting experience to participate in such a simulation since it is very much applicable to what we have witnessed in the context of the real world with the amount of disinformation that has been circulating in regards to COVID-19 and the vaccines. For our own war game in this class, my group is creating one where environmental activists and hacktivists are attacking an oil rig and refinery in Houston, Texas. We're still in the brainstorming stage of this project, so a lot of the details aren't fully fleshed out yet, but we will be incorporating various types of attacks into our war game, such as a ransomware attack, which is a type of software that blocks access to a system until a ransom is paid. We're also planning on incorporating events such as an explosion at the oil refinery or even an oil spill. But overall, our goal for those that play our war game is to have an understanding of cybersecurity risks and knowing how to respond to them, as well as learning more about the environmental issues surrounding oil and the oil industry. So I would like to end my presentation with this quote that I found, which says, "Opportunities don't happen, you create them." It sounds pretty corny, but I think it is very true. My major doesn't directly provide me the opportunity to engage in work that supports the APIDA community, so I had to create them myself by getting involved in various organizations such as AASU and Ascend. Even the opportunity to help the APIDA caucus for my project management course was something that I had to create. Otherwise, my group would have probably gone with our other option of helping a local restaurant with marketing. So if there's something that you want to do, you have to create them. Don't wait for opportunities to come to you. Be proactive and don't be afraid to step out of your comfort zone. Thank you all for listening.
Whoops, thank you, Lily. Really appreciate it. And Tareem is next.
Yes. Okay, here, let me pull up mine. Okay. Okay. Hi, everyone. So I think this is where we're switching gears in the presentation, and everyone after me, including myself, are going to talk about our specific research projects that we've been doing. But first, some little things about me. So I'm a senior majoring in multimedia journalism, international relations, and Arabic. And then I also have minors in Middle East studies and women's and gender studies. And I've been using independent studies and undergraduate research opportunities to combine my multiple interests so that I could have an interdisciplinary education for myself. It's just because I had a lot of interests, and it was also not as much as it sounds like because a lot of my classes overlapped with each other. So for my undergraduate senior honors thesis, I combined all of my majors and minors into one big paper, and this is called "We Are Just Not Into You. We are just not that into you. #You stink." And this is related to the Lebanese garbage crisis in 2015, when in Lebanon, basically what happened is that there was 2 big landfills that Lebanon had to close down because they were causing massive health crises in the region. And that led to a bunch of trash being filled up in the water around them, in their streets, in local areas. And then that kind of spurred a massive wave of protests, which led to a lot of government accountability questions. And then I add a gendered lens to this by focusing on women's participation in these protests specifically. Also, I'm sorry if I do feel low energy. I'm fasting today. So I'd like to make that disclaimer. So the overview of my project is that it explores 2 streams regarding Lebanon's health policies, environmental crises, and women's civil involvement. And the first stream is whether or not their environmental crisis in Lebanon is disproportionately affecting women's lives and health in Lebanon. And then the second stream is the extent to which women's contributions in Lebanese protests are related to government accountability in the health and environmental crisis. And then the reason that I'm doing this paper is because my international relations major is very geared towards policy making. And I'd like to contribute to that just by having policy suggestions at the end of my paper that is related to gender disparities in Lebanon's health policies. My theoretical considerations are mainly ecofeminism from Maria Mize's books and Vandana Shiva. I discovered Mize back when I took the women's studies seminar for my women's and gender studies minor. And I think she introduced post-colonialism to me. And ever since then, I've just been using post-colonial feminist literature anywhere that I can. And this paper is heavily focused on that, and specifically hers because it has that post-colonial touch to it. And that way I'm not only focusing on Western concepts of feminism and feminism in policymaking. And then it's also heavily a content analysis framework where I'm gathering news reports and online media sources, as well as personal accounts from protesters and these protests so that I can just bring some more lively voices into my paper. Oh, so this is just a photo of one of the protests against the health policies in Lebanon and like the poor or mishandling of the health crises. As you can see, women are not the only ones protesting in Lebanon, but old people, young people, women, men, non-binary, like you'll see everyone at these protests. And they have been having a wave of protests before 2015 and after, all kind of related around the same issues of an environmental crisis, a health crisis, but also economic problems and the general failure of the government to transition properly since the 60s Civil War. So I've been doing this project for about a year now, and last semester I mainly focused on government accountability in Lebanon and exacerbating the health crisis. But this semester I added that gendered lens so that I can contribute from the work that I did in my women's and gender studies minor into this. So for this paper or this section, I found that protesting in Lebanon is not gendered in general, but everyone participates in it, and even the reasons that they're participating for instance, back in March, there was a wave of protests protesting against the poor maternal care that the government provides women. Women were not the only ones protesting, although you did see a lot of mothers there. But there were also men, women, children, young men, and also young women, girls. I've also found that there's limited to no studies on women's health in Lebanon. This is interesting because I know in our policies, if we focus on a lot of Arab countries, Lebanon is one of them. Whether or not we want to consider Lebanon as a part of, I guess, an Asian identity will depend on what the Lebanese have to say for themselves. But there isn't a lot from us or general statistics on women's health in Lebanon. But there is a lot of statistics on children's health. So there is a division in research in that. But this is where I've been struggling a little bit, but I've been able to gather a lot of data basically from the UN and WHO, the World Health Organization. I've also found that women are at the forefront of the 2020 blast crisis protests. So on August 4th in 2020, Lebanon suffered a port blast crisis where a lot of people blame the government for holding a lot of these like dangerous substances near a port. And then an accident happened and it blew up a part of Beirut basically, which is, I mean, half the population of Lebanon lives in Beirut. And it also added to the water crisis because now they have a bunch of trash in the Mediterranean, as well as more trash around the cities. And then it kind of exacerbated the trash crisis that has already been going on for the past 5 years. And there have been studies on the blast crisis recently, And ISA has found that it did disproportionately affect women because of economic factors, them losing their homes, which is where the majority of the women in Lebanon stay because of, cultural factors. And then there also has been little research that connects the gendered perspective of the environmental health crisis to specific populations in Lebanon. Like here, I mean women, but in general, it doesn't really connect it to the health issues related to children, for example. Or I think that another one that they've considered is mental health, but they haven't considered a gendered perspective on the mental health crisis in Lebanon. So, okay, this is just another photo of a Lebanese woman who is protesting. And I think this is just water at the policemen. And it's just an example of civic engagement by women in Lebanon. And these are my next steps. So this paper is almost complete. But as I said, for my first stream, I'm still searching for health policies and effects on specific populations in Lebanon. And for the second stream, I have yet to reach out to real voices to conclude and include in this paper. But right now it's highly theoretical, and I hope to make it more lively, as well as incorporate the skills that I learned in my multimedia journalism classes, as well as at the ACE Center while I was interviewing people for other research projects. And then I think, yeah. So this is the last photo of women protesting in Lebanon. This was taken in March with the New Arab staff, and it's basically staff of the women from this newspaper protesting against the poor maternal care in Lebanon. I think that's everything. The next, yep. All right, thank you so much.
Thank you, Tareem. That was amazing. Your research is so important. Next is Jessica Nguyen.
Thanks, Nina. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen now. Can everyone see it? Yeah, okay, cool. Before I get started, I want to give a special shout out to the Asian Cultural Engagement Center for facilitating this event, and extra special shout out to Dr. Nina Ha for having me here as a panelist. I'm so honored to be on this panel with the other talented and intelligent people here. So like Tareem said, I'm mainly going to be talking about my research. There's a portion at the end where I will speak a little bit about my leadership experience here. But yeah, let's get right into it. So my name is Jessica Nguyen. My friends call me Jess. I am currently a senior studying economics, and I'm minoring in Asian studies and PPE, which is philosophy, politics, and economics. I'm a student activist. I am involved in a few organizations, and some of them to name are the Asian American Student Union, the Intercollegiate APIDA Coalition, and with my involvement with the Asian American Student Union, I'm also involved with the Commission on Student Affairs and Order of the Gavel. The research projects that I've had the privilege of working on throughout my undergraduate career here are the Asian American Feminist Historiography, Researching Local Histories, the Juneteenth Scholars Project, which is ongoing, and another ongoing project, which is a gendered study on economics publications during COVID-19. So first, I'm going to be talking about my research experience in the order that I had experience in. So my primary research experience started at the Asian Cultural Engagement Center when I was a student worker working with Dr. Nina Ha, and actually I was working with Lily as well. I did a lot of graphic designing stuff on Canva, but I also began to involve myself with some research with helping with documentation for the NPZ grant that we were working on at the time. But my first really solidified research experience was with Dr. Nina Ha and Dr. Jennifer Stano-Franchini. And this was spring of 2020. And this is a project that I mentioned prior called Asian American Feminist Historiography. A research project that I started working on last semester as part of the Juneteenth Scholars Project, which I will elaborate on in the coming slides. And lastly, the only research project that I've worked on that has to do with my major is a COVID-19 gendered project. So the first one regarding the feminist historiography was sectioned off into two groups. There were two working groups for this project. Our goal was to look into the history of APIDA faculty and student contributions at Virginia Tech. And I was on the archival team, but the oral history team that Tareem was on actually worked on interviewing significant APIDA leaders that contributed to our community at Virginia Tech, whereas our team worked on digging up information, mostly in the university archival office at Nguyen Library, to look at the contributions that past APIDA organizations have made. And then with that information, we constructed a timeline. To my knowledge, there hasn't been a project done like this in the past, so it's the first of its kind. It's still kind of ongoing. There's a lot to be added. It's not comprehensive by any means, but we got a lot done that semester, and I'm really proud of that work. We were able to, with that information, construct a timeline on Omeka at the end of the semester, which our good friend Angela Ngo worked on. I believe you can find this project on the A Center website. Correct me if I'm wrong, Nina. But yeah, I currently don't have the link to it. The second project that I'm currently working on is this project that has to do with the Juneteenth Scholars Program, which is sponsored. It's a new program, a research program sponsored by the Virginia Tech College of Liberal Arts. It was launched at the end of spring 2020, but we didn't really start working on it until the summer in response to the Black Lives Matter movement. There are several faculty members that are working on Juneteenth Scholars Project, all doing different topics related to Juneteenth. I'm actually doing more archival research with this. So my responsibility is to search through online newspaper archives from as early as the 1850s to contribute to this project. So I mainly just look through newspapers and keywords, and I document relevant historical information to the main project. The faculty member I'm working with this on is Dr. Ellen Lumba, and just a little bit more about this project. I'm assisting with research regarding the conditions between the 1870s and 1890s that led to the eventual emergence of Jim Crow laws, aggression towards Asian workers migrating into the United States, the last military engagement with Native American resistance, and the subsequent colonization of territories in the Pacific, Latin American, and the Caribbean. So yeah, there are quite a few keywords that I have to look through. There's thousands of articles that we've been looking through as well. It's definitely not going to be done this semester, but I'm glad to be part of it. And the last research project that I've been working on, the one that has to do with my major, is this gendered research endeavor related to COVID-19. It is sponsored by the Virginia Tech Department of Economics. I'm actually working directly with the department head of economics, Dr. Saranji, and Dr. Suge. So essentially our project looks at the top 5 economics journals for trends on publications. We are currently comparing trends between women scholars and men scholars. It's ongoing. We're in the data collection process right now. We started with modifying the methodology, the introduction, and the abstract, but my role with this project, in addition to the data collection and editing the abstract and introduction, I actually revised the methodology, because initially our methodology to look at the patterns and identify the gender of the publisher or the scholar who wrote the article was simply going to their cover letter and looking at their photo to identify their gender, which perpetuates this false notion of a gender binary, but also doesn't explicitly consider the pronouns of the scholars. So I worked on revising the methodology to be more inclusive in this regard. And that's all the research experience I've had, again, still ongoing. But now I'm going to talk a little bit about my leadership experience here. So this has been the most fulfilling experience I've ever had. It's such a privilege to be part of the Asian American Student Union here at Virginia Tech. So from 2019 to 2020, I was the vice president internal for the Asian American Student Union. And just a bit more context on AASU, if you don't know what it is, we are the umbrella organization that represents the entire APIDA community here at Virginia Tech, which is the Asian Pacific Islander Daisy American community. We work at a university level to support the APIDA population and very closely with the Asian Cultural Engagement Center. And serving as VPI, my main role was keeping close relationships with our constituency. And as an umbrella organization, we currently have 15 APIDA constituent organizations serving with us. Lily was actually the president at this time, and she taught me a lot of what I know now, serving as the current president. And serving as president this year, I've been able to continue representing the APIDA population at the university level, and that entails being on organizations like Order of the Gavel and the Commission on Student Affairs. And essentially, the Commission on Student Affairs is this organization that, with all the university charter student org presidents, we all represent large minority communities. We work with faculty members and administration as well, just to bring up the concerns of our community. And the second organization that I play a very big role in, that I have been very connected with recently, is the Intercollegiate APIDA Coalition, which is actually a national organization that was constructed in response to the surge in anti-Asian violence and hate during the pandemic. It is entirely student-run with student leaders across the country, and it was initiated by Kobe Kong, who is the Johns Hopkins class president of 2024. Shout out to Kobe. And our main projects have included things like release of a joint statement with over 50 different universities involved, and over 100 student organizations within these universities have signed on to it, a speaker panel with notable APIDA advocates, such as Benny Luo from Next Shark, Tammy Cho from Hate as a Virus, and lastly, a fundraiser for Asian Americans Advancing Justice. My involvement with AASU has very much inspired me to be part of this organization and organize at this capacity. It's been such a fruitful experience for me, and it has really taught me so much about organizing, advocacy work, and mostly just helping me realize what I want to do after college. I really enjoy advocacy work. So I'm excited for the next chapter of my life in that regard. But that's all I have. I made this slide when I didn't realize that we were doing questions at the end. But yeah, presenting next is Michelle, but thank you so much, everyone. It's been a pleasure to be on here.
Thank you, Jessica. Next is Michelle.
Hello, everybody. I am very, very nervous. I have not done this in a long time, so everyone please bear with me. I do not have a presentation. I just wanted to detail my research just in like a more organic manner. I feel like once I have a presentation up, I feel very, very nervous, and like I feel like I just read off of the screen. So in an effort to make it seem more personable, I wanted to just like kind of free ball. So I apologize, you're just gonna have to look at my face the entire time. So sorry about that. But before I start, like everyone prior before me, I just want to say thank you so much for being here today to watch, I mean, not just on me, but my fellow panelists, and about our experiences and our research. And it's really an honor to be considered for like this opportunity. And I really can't thank everyone enough for being here and for coming. And a big thank you to Nina as well, who really pushed for my participation on this. I honestly wasn't going to do this at first, but because I was afraid that, you know, I don't do research, I write papers and stuff like that, but Nina really encouraged me just to be myself and just say something because I apparently have stuff of substance to say. So thank you so much, Nina, and for always pushing me to challenge myself, both academically and personally. So thank you. For everyone, hi, my name is Michelle. I am a senior. I study English with a concentration in pre-law. I serve on WSU as Vice President External, and I'm super happy to have been part of such an amazing board because it's given me so much space as a person to grow and develop as an Asian American person. And it's the reason why I'm here. And if there's anything that I've learned from my time here at Tech is that community is everything. Being part of a community and sharing identity in a community is something that cannot be understated. So I just want to shout out that and shout out to all my amazing professors I've had over the years, okay, who are in this Zoom. Okay, with that, before I babble for way too long, let me get into it. But for my presentation today, I will be discussing the research I've been conducting for my senior seminar class that I have been taking for this semester, which also ties into my own personal background as an Asian American woman and kind of sort of how the two intermingle. So yeah, so as the title of the event details, I've been asked to share and discuss my research, which I basically is surrounding work I've been doing for my senior seminar class, and it's called Searching for Hamlet. And like the name suggests, we discuss all things Hamlet, which is kind of unfortunate because I'm not a huge Shakespeare fan. I actually detest Shakespeare so much because I'm not interested in what old white men have to say. But, you know, for the spirit of the class, I am participating. But anyways, for the class, we discuss all things Hamlet and have had to read like different variations of Hamlet, dissect various films and play adaptations of Hamlet. And recently, we've explored how Hamlet has been translated over in different languages and like the sort of nuances that arise with those translations, you know, like the sort of questions that we ask are, you know, is reading Hamlet in Arabic the same exact way as you would read it in English? You know, like what words or what phrases are used to describe Hamlet and his madness that don't have the same like gravitas or weight that it holds in that language as opposed to English. So super, super interesting stuff like that. And I really, honest to God, like really enjoyed this aspect and the sort of dilemma in the work of translation. I, truthfully speaking, even though I am an English major, I don't think I've ever really given that much thought to how universal works or like big well-known works like Hamlet are translated, especially works like Hamlet that are like historically revered and treasured. And I just thought to myself that pretty much all of what we read in English is, I assume, exactly the same as it is in every single other language. And there are not really any nuances to it. But obviously, with my research, I've come to realize that, obviously people in Japan or other countries know what the story of Hamlet is, but there are still very specific nuances and interpretations that, we as English speakers and readers might not pick up on. And I think it's super fascinating because, there's this idea that there are thousands and thousands of wonderful and amazing texts like you haven't had the chance to read or can't read because, there's a language barrier, you don't know the language. And I think a lot of us kind of accept this fact because, A, there are so many amazing, texts in English, and well, B, translation really doesn't feel the same. For example, like the great poet Rumi, his work is legendary and it's amazing and it's beautiful and it's moving. And it's been translated countless of times over and over in countless different languages. But even still, there are things that we are not really privy to, or, there are things that we missed out on because it's been translated to fit our, honestly speaking, very, very limited boundaries of English. And I think that it's really significant and special that there are a treasure hold of different meanings that exist only in that original language. And there are interpretations that we have yet to build for ourselves because we don't know the language. And I think there's something to be said for how special it is for you to know the language in your heart and read the type of language, and not having it be able translated over in English, because English doesn't do it justice. English doesn't put the position that it deserves. And so this concept I applied with Hamlet. I'm so sorry, there's a motorcycle out there. This concept also applies with Hamlet. And so even though we know the story, we don't know what different interpretations we could possibly have of Hamlet because of all the different language it's been molded for. So this is the sort of foundation I've been building off of for this semester. And for me, although figuring out what words are translated differently is fascinating, for my research, was more interested in seeing how concepts in Hamlet were being translated differently. And I wanted to see the depths to which translation affects a work and expands the concept of translation past words to fit concepts. And for Hamlet, I thought, one of the biggest concepts, or, a token mark of Hamlet is the presence of Hamlet's madness or his mental illness. It's a huge part of the play, obviously, as we've all had to suffer through 12th grade English and read Hamlet. We all know that, if you've read it, you've read about the madness of Hamlet. And it influenced a lot of how we view Hamlet as a character and his motivations. And our interpretations of Hamlet can't really be disentangled from, his moments of mania, his depression, his mood swings, his overall ups and downs. How are his moments of mental agony translated in different languages? Because it goes without saying, for a lot of us, I think we know that mental illness hasn't always been widely accepted as, legitimate or worthy of concern until very recently, which is why, to highlight all these great events that we put on from the A Center, highlighting the importance of mental health, taking care of yourself, all those things that we are now putting into stride, whereas earlier was really not a thing that we were considering, despite the fact that it's always been there. And as Hamlet has been translated throughout the years, I think I'm pretty interested to know if there are any huge differences in the depiction and the translation of Hamlet's mental illnesses. And for me particularly, it's not just any language, but more specifically, this is actually what I'm writing about. I'm sorry it took so long to get here, but what I'm interested in learning is how is Hamlet's mental illness translated in Asian languages, and what does the madness look like and how is it described? I thought this was something super fascinating to focus on because not just because like I said, the idea of translation is super interesting, but also the fact that it's a very personal experience and idea to me and my own experiences. I chose to focus on Asian languages specifically because I have my own personal understanding of how difficult and taboo it is to talk about mental illness in Asian cultures. And oftentimes how madness or sadness or any extreme emotions of mental illness are often downplayed, they're often diminished, tucked away, minimized. So often is the topic of mental health completely disregarded and thought of as insignificant in Asian communities. And I think the heart of my research is looking for instances of Hamlet's madness not being tucked away and not being translated as anything less than what it is, which is an illness. And for me, I think I wonder, for even as big of a tale as Hamlet is there any desire in the culture to downplay this sort of element that is so inherently tied to the character and to the story? Because, like I mentioned earlier, the idea of Hamlet is that, he's super up and down. He has a lot of, his turbulence is a huge part of the reason why he is the character that he is. And that makes pretty much what the story, what it is. So I was interested to know, how much desire is there to downplay it, and do they downplay it? Because so much of language is tied to culture. And when said culture doesn't validate mental illnesses and recognize it, how much of the story is being translated accurately is basically what I was trying to get at. And so this ties a little bit into my own personal experience as an Asian American woman who has and struggles immensely with her own mental health. I felt like I honestly had a personal obligation to make this the focal point of my research. I felt like I wanted acknowledgement and proper literary acknowledgement of this, because for lots of people in Asian cultures, there really is no acknowledgement. And I know for me in particular, the lack of acknowledgement made it that much harder to seek out the resources that I needed, and to understand that my experiences are valid and deserving of recognition, just as a lot of people who are Asian and come from cultures where mental health is not very much talked about. I want to emphasize the fact that my background is pretty much particularly not unique. It's the same as lots of people. It's the same story wherein my parents are first-generation immigrants. They are from Korea. They worked tirelessly to provide a better life for me and my siblings. They trained me to be good in school, which I'm not always good at, and all the typically classic moves of immigrant parents that I'm sure a lot of people are very familiar with Asian culture or not. And mental health in particular was and continues to be not considered something important or worthy of discussion. And in between being expected to perform academically well and fulfilling familial duties, the idea of being unable to handle that pressure mentally is often perceived as a sign of weakness and selfishness. And the idea of reaching out to someone like a therapist or someone who wasn't within the familial circle is, looked down upon. Because God forbid you reach out to a therapist or someone who is in your family, because there's no reason to. And there's the idea that there is nothing wrong with you, and there's the idea of being hush-hush about certain problems in the order of not wanting to bring shame. And it's with that sort of mentality that in my own personal experience in dealing with my mental health, and especially my parents dealing with my mental health, is recognizing the importance of language, recognizing the sort of language that we use to describe, mental illness, the mentally ill, and reframing the narratives we put those with mental illnesses in. Especially in Asian cultures where the connotation and usage behind the words shame and honor have really shaped the conversations around mental health, so much so that it's often a barrier, and it's often impossible for us to talk about mental health without the presence of shame and honor, and bringing shame to your family, you're dishonoring your family. So much of that is on the burden of, people who struggle with mental health issues and are part of this sort of culture that suppresses, reaching out and seeking help. Because of this background, knowing that is how mental health has been framed for years in Asian cultures, I guess for my research and for myself, I'm interested in wanting to discover what this madness Hamlet has looks like in this literary text. Because we can somewhat argue that Hamlet is a heroic figure. So, how do you navigate this hero's madness, given the fact that this madness is not looked favorably upon or is even admitted to being a real thing in some cultures? And so that is the bulk of the research that I've been doing for my class. Basically, coming back to the idea of the importance of translation, the idea that translating books are not as simple as, Google translating things from English to, Arabic or anything like that. So much of the language and words that we use filters into our perceptions of these stories and these characters. And it's very, very important that, for me personally, that I am able to see the ways in which culture, language affect stories that we have passed on traditionally for years and years and years. So yeah, that is the end of my research. I'm very sorry for not having a presentation. I hope I did not ramble, but thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Michelle, and thank you everybody for an amazing, just amazing presentations. I learned so much from you. I always learned a lot from all of you, and I always learn more and more. So I really, really appreciate all of the work that you put into this presentation, but just in general throughout your time at Virginia Tech. There was one question from in the chat, and I hope the audience can provide questions and comments in the chat. One is a question, and I'm not sure if I definitely can't answer it. I don't know if others can. Is mental illness a science in Eastern cultures, or does it originate with Freud? I'm not a psychologist, and I don't know if any of you, Michelle, any thoughts on that? That might be a question for the audience as well. I'm not sure. That's not my area of expertise. We'll move on to something else and then maybe come back to that, revisit that question. Another is thank you for your presentations. I was wondering if you have any words of wisdom for yourself when you were first coming to Virginia Tech. What would you have advised? Thank you again for the wonderful and multifaceted presentations. And other people are saying thank you for your hard work. So any advice to your former selves or incoming students or whomever?
I have some corny advice. Okay. This is really cliche, but definitely just tune in to what makes you happy. Paying attention to what makes you happy and actively seeking out to acknowledge that will naturally make that passion grow. And even this semester, I put myself in a class that I thought I wanted to be in and I didn't want to be in. It was a coding class and I suffered so much. I realized it wasn't what I wanted to do at all, but I found myself to be much happier after tuning into the things that I find joy in, such as advocacy work.
Thank you, Jess. Someone else?
I think for me, this is something that I actually did, but like thought of myself. I wasn't advised it. Like I think seeking out a mentor or many mentors for your interests will help you a lot throughout your 4 years. And this isn't just for your research, but also for your work, extracurricular activities, for your future, for just someone. It doesn't have to be your advisor, because I know we all probably have like really terrible advisor experiences one way or another, but it's just someone. Like for me, like I didn't have Dr. Ha my first year or second year, I think, but now she is someone who I come to regularly for a myriad of like things, from like research to my future. So I think having someone for support is really important.
Thank you, Tareem. Elaine, Michelle, Lily?
I think Tareem and Jessica summed it up really well. Stay true to yourself.
I think advice that I would have given myself personally is give yourself grace to mess up. Be okay with messing up. Be okay with understanding that you don't want to be a lawyer and you don't want to stick with that track for 4 years and then not think of other things. Just be as open to things as possible and be open to understanding that this is a grace period for you to mess up and it's okay for you to find other places of worth outside of academics.
I agree with what everyone has said so far. And I guess I would also like to add or elaborate. You never know until you try. So I guess speaking from personal experience, like there were so many instances where I felt like maybe my credentials weren't up to par, or like I just didn't think I was good enough to apply for like a certain internship position, or even my freshman year when I applied to be a double ASU intern, like I was invited for the interview, but then I backed out because I didn't think that I was good enough to join ASU. But like, but don't like let those moments of like self-doubt like stop you from, like shooting your shot, right? I definitely don't regret, just going for it. Like, I'm so glad that I ended up still interviewing for ASU. Well, I asked for a second interview, so I got into ASU. And then even my sophomore year, like I managed to get an externship at CVS. Yeah, so definitely just don't be afraid of rejections, because I guess as human beings, you'll experience rejections along the way, but you just have to keep looking ahead and never stop trying.
One question that I also really like is, I wonder if you could also talk about how you see yourselves being role models for future students, even once you leave the university and become alumni. You're graduating soon. So what does it mean to be a role model?
Well, Nina, you've said several times that even after we graduate, you'll find a way to pull us back in. So I anticipate that, and I'm looking forward to it. In terms of being a role model for future students, I just really want to emphasize that, sorry, give me a second. I do my work for AASU because I care about the APIDA community here a lot, and it resonates a lot with my identity as a Vietnamese American woman. And I want every APIDA student to feel welcome here, to feel like they have a space to that they can feel safe in. And I hope that the work that I do at that capacity, with my intentions, can inspire them, and that I can continue serving as a role model for them in that regard.
I guess to continue on with that answer, my first thought was really like trying to touch as many lives as I possibly can, while also staying very genuine. Like with my mentorship program and internship program that I've been coordinating this past year, like even if my name, like, you don't know your great grandparents' names, you don't know them, but like you see the legacy, like they left, you're that person. So like even if my name specifically isn't mentioned like after a couple years, it's just the idea that these students that I got to work with, hopefully they continue what I've started or wanted to continue myself. So I guess that's my, what was the question? how I see myself being a role model. Yes.
Actually, recently I've been introduced to a few underclassmen thanks to Dr. Haas, and she's been giving them my contact information. And it's been really nice actually to talk to current freshmen and sophomores, just because I guess now that I'm a senior and I'm not like super involved in the other like APIDA organizations, like I don't really get to meet underclassmen as often. And it was just really nice to feel like my advice and my experiences were so valuable to them, like sharing my advice on like which classes to take for BIT, for example, or even just my experiences in AASU and other organizations that I joined and picked up leadership positions in. So I guess how I see myself being a role model is, I don't know, being able to share like my wisdom and advice to others, and hopefully, hopefully it helps them too. So.
I think I'm just gonna echo what Jess, Elaine, and Lily have said. I guess everyone throughout the panel. I don't have a specific advice for people in my own major, just because this is something I didn't talk about. But there's not that many APIDA members in my major or multiple majors, besides maybe Arabic, which is already it's already like a non it's a language basically, right? So most of my advice would probably go towards my student leadership position with Muslim Student Union. And I think my greatest support would come back from me being an alumna and responding to, I guess, things that current board members still need to make sure our organization doesn't fall flat, because it started in 2017, but we didn't really start moving forward with advocacy for Muslims until this year. And so I think what, I guess how I see myself as a role model is just someone who underclassmen or people that are still at tech and a part of organizations that I've been a part of can still reach out to and always come back to me if they need extra support or like, a support from the outside community.
Oh, okay. Okay, I will be quick. To be honest, I don't really view myself as a role model. I think I have always been someone who has looked up to other people. And I think what is so great about role models is the fact that they people don't put them on pedestals, like they don't see themselves as people on pedestals. And I think there's the idea of like everyone is working for a collective, and everyone is working, no one person is greater than the other person. And I really admire people who understand that we are giving forward just as other people have given to us. And I know of so many amazing people who have given so much to me. And I think that's what makes a really good role model. And I hope that I can give forward to someone younger than me, and allow them the space to grow just as other people allowed me the space to grow.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, everyone. Again, I hope you guys can save what's in the chats, because thank you for the panelists for all of your comments and feedback. You've been so wonderful and amazing and supportive, especially to the APIDA students here. And I hope to do more of these in the future as well. And thank you everybody for all of your support. Also, please note that we have a lot of APIDAHM events for this week and next week, our last week of APIDAHM. This week on Thursday, we have the APIDA leaders in politics. So please make sure to attend that, because you'll get to hear some stories from the APIDA politicians. And then on Friday, Jessica's band is playing at a concert and performance. So please come and support her band. We're not recording it, so come now or you'll miss it. So thank you everyone again for all of your support. And good luck with the closing of the semester. And feel free to come to the achievement ceremony on May 6th at 6 o'clock, so you can see all these wonderful, fabulous, amazing students again. All right, thank you. Let's see, I am going to stop recording.